Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm going to go through my NBA model tonight instead of tomorrow morning. Only 4 games tonight and quite a few tomorrow, so maybe this will help catch a few of these early lines. I got half of them here, got half on the next slide. I will be going through each of these games one by one after. Here's the rest of the games. Some of them don't have spreads or totals yet, at least at the time that I had looked, just before I started recording this. And then I got the model predictions there, and if there is a lean yet, then it'll have it. Like I said, I will be going through each of these one by one. All right, first game will be Chicago going to Boston. The model does like Boston 118 to 108, so about 10 points. The market is fairly large on this. It is at 13.5, and total is at 226.5. So the total from the model is 226, so it's half a point under. Depends which way this gets bet in the next couple hours till tomorrow morning. Obviously, as to where this will move and end up. But the model's slightly on the under. It's right on with Vegas, though. It is just off on the spread of this game. As you can see, it started the week at 6 points on Boston. It has moved up to about the 13-point mark, and then it just dropped after the last game. Boston got beat pretty bad by the Knicks at home, so that's influencing their score a little bit more than I think it probably should have. Chicago has obviously been struggling a lot recently, so Boston did win at home before. They won 115 to 101 back on January 5th, and a little more recently on the 24th of January, Chicago won in Chicago 114 to 111. So a close one that was on the road. Chicago's lost 5 straight games, though. They are only 2-8 in their last 10, and they're 9-18 on the road. Boston's pretty good at home. They're 17-9 at home. Even if the last game was a bit of a struggle, it was a much better team. They're 7-3 in their last 10, 4-1 in their last 5. They had a 5-game win streak going before that last game. So I would be on the Boston spread side. I'd probably like to buy it down a few points, but I think there's a very good chance they clear it even at that high of a line. Chicago's just been struggling. If you look at their defensive rating, right around 121 in recent games, and their offensive rating is only 111. Boston is only 109 in recent games on their offensive rating, just a much better defensive rating. So it's a big spread to cover on a low total, but it's actually a decent total for this game because of the mixture. But even at the model, it's got it at 10 points. It's right there at that total. So to get there, you'd be looking more at like 120 to 106. So if you think that that's something Boston can pull off, then you might be on the Boston side. I think I would like to buy it down to around that 10-point mark, maybe even 9. See if you can find a good line there. Should be a pretty good game for Boston player props. You got Vucevic going back to Chicago. Well, not going back, but playing Chicago. Obviously, that's where he just got traded from. Anthony Simons coming back to Boston. Might be a good look for three-pointers. When he was getting minutes in Boston, he was hitting quite a few. So I could see this being a good place, him coming back. Going against the old team, I do believe he's probably going to be starting. I believe he's started the last game, maybe the last 2. So perhaps his threes would be a good spot for it. But want to see. Obviously, I don't think the player prop lines are out yet. Those typically come out a little bit later. Something you might want to keep an eye out for. And then the total, I'm not entirely sure. I could see this going over if Chicago can keep up. If Boston's defense holds Chicago down, I could see this definitely staying under. So not really a fan of a side on the total. I do just like Boston, just maybe not at that quite that high of a spread. All right, the next game is going to be Portland going to Minnesota. The model likes Minnesota 120 to about 113, so a little over 7 points there, about 7.5. Which is right there in line with Vegas. They are at 7.5 too. Slightly on the underside with the model at 233. Vegas has it opening at 235.5. So it's been relatively steady and increasing on the total all week. Started at 228. Slight dip down by half a point on day 3, but that's not too bad. And then it went up 229, 233, and it's just been right there the last couple of days. So it is trending in the direction that Vegas likes it, but it hasn't quite made it. So obviously, these are two teams that can score. Minnesota has shown that they can struggle a little bit recently. I don't think this will be a game where that happens, but a lot of the games where it has happened have been games where it hasn't made a lot of sense. So just something to keep an eye out for. Minnesota does have the better offensive rating at 118. Portland is down at 109. Minnesota's defensive rating is better at 112, but it's not great. It's not as good as it's been in the past. So they do still have 5.5 points on Portland. Theirs is at 117.5. If you look at the graph, it's been very steadily on Minnesota. The size of the spread has changed a little bit, but it hasn't changed too much. Dipped down 0.5 point from day 1 to day 2, and then it shot up 1.5 points. Went up another point. It's dropped back down a little bit, but it's stayed at that 7.5. Minnesota, like I said, they have had some bad losses recently, and all of that factored in, it still has a pretty steady spread all week. So I think this is a place where you might take Minnesota on the spread. They are playing at home. The model's right there with it. It looks pretty good. I think on the total, I like a lot of points. So I think I would probably take the over, but I don't know that I would take it at the line that they have it at. I think I like it more where the model is, or perhaps try to even buy that down a few more points if you can. If you could buy down the Minnesota spread a few points, buy down the total a few points, pair those together, it doesn't seem like something that would be too sweaty to me. Probably could get decent odds on that. This should also be a pretty good prop game. You got 3-point shooters, as long as Minnesota's players are on, should be pretty good. You have a really good center on center matchup with Klingon and Gobert. So I don't know who's going to win that rebound matchup, but they're both going to probably end up with quite a few. I don't know who. Someone's going to have to end up on the better. So that'll be a good matchup to watch, though. Julius Randle, always good for props. Recently has had a couple of off games in certain areas, but not like terrible at all. If Avdia plays, if he's back, that helps out Portland a lot. Shaedon Sharpe, I'm not sure how long he's going to be out. Henderson has played a little bit now, so he should be starting to get back in the groove of things. So again, I like the props. I do like points in this game. So if I had to pick a side at the line it's at, I would still take the over. I do think that there's a good chance of that. And I do like Minnesota on the spread side. Just seems like pretty good options for that game tomorrow. All right, so the next game will be Memphis going to Denver. Model does have Denver at 120. Memphis is about 113. So it has Denver at a 7-point spread. Vegas has them twice that. They have them at 13.5. Obviously, Memphis did trade quite a few players away. The model again is at 233. Vegas is a few points higher again, 236.5. If you see that graph early in the week, it actually was on Memphis. All of that trade information has finally worked its way in. It flipped pretty hard on day 3 to Denver to 4 points, and it has gone up to Denver at 7 points. And that is all considering Denver has lost 4 of their last 5 games. Now, those teams have been Oklahoma City, Detroit, New York, and Cleveland that beat them. So they haven't had bad losses. They've been in those games. Detroit was a 2-point loss, I believe, in the end. Same with Cleveland. New York went to double overtime, ended up 7-point loss. Oklahoma City was a little bit more. I believe that ended up around 10. But even with Denver losing, the model is growing on them. 13.5 is a very, very large spread. Obviously, that team, if healthy, can do it. Injuries would be a big key on Denver. They've had quite a few people questionable. Murray, Jokic, obviously. Peyton Watson is out with his hamstring issue. So they do have injuries. They may have people that may not play. I would keep an eye out for that. But the model is consistently growing on Denver. If it starts shrinking at all and you can get a line anywhere near 7, 8, 9, it probably will be pretty good. Double digits always just kind of worries me a little bit, especially with a team that's been injured. And Memphis has been losing, but they've shown a little bit recently. Cam Spencer's been looking pretty good. Uh, Wells, GG. So they have players there that can score points. They're just going to give up points. Both teams have pretty bad defensive ratings. We got Memphis at 117. Denver is at 115 in recent games. Offensively, though, Denver is scoring. They're keeping up. They got the 119 rating. Memphis is on the underside of the rating. They're at 113. So 6-point gap in offensive ratings, 2-point gap in defensive ratings for both in Denver's favor. So it does look good for around a double-digit win. Just getting to that 13.5, definitely want to make sure Denver is fully healthy. On the spread side, or on the total side, the model has been consistently under, but it has been growing. It started at 229, went up to almost 232, got up to 234.5. So it was almost there, and then it came back down 1 point. So Denver's score has been growing all week. Memphis on this last day did take a 2-point dip. If you think Memphis can score on Denver and score throughout the game, keep it going, you might want to go on the over. I think this one is pretty well priced, even at a pretty high total of 236.5. So I think I would probably lean on the underside if I was going to be taking a pick on this. I do like Denver. Again, very, very, very high spread on these games. So wouldn't be one of my favorite ones to take just because health issues and a very large spread. All right, next game is going to be Atlanta at Charlotte. Model has Charlotte at 118, Atlanta at about 111.5, so 6.5 points in the Charlotte direction. That is 1 point more than Vegas. Vegas is at 5.5 on Charlotte. And the total is at 230 by the model. That's 1.5 points under where Vegas is starting out. They're at 231.5. So slightly on the Charlotte side, slightly on the underside. If you look at the spread throughout the week, though, it has been shrinking all week long. Started at 13 points on Charlotte, and it's down to 6.5. So the total, relatively steady, 227. It has gone up to 230, but that's only 3 points throughout the entire week. Even with Charlotte falling off 6.5 points, the spread has dipped in half. So on top of all of that, don't know who's going to play, who's not going to play. On injury-wise, Jalen Johnson did miss the last game for Atlanta, and they ended up getting blown out in that game without him playing. But Charlotte is obviously going to be without Diabate and without Miles Bridges, not just for this next game, but probably multiple games, 5, maybe 10. Not really sure. That escalated really quickly with Detroit yesterday. So obviously they're going to be missing some games. So that's a couple big misses, a lot of energy, especially from Diabate on the energy part. Bridges, a lot of experience. So it'll be interesting. You're going to have LaMelo there with Brandon Miller, Con Knipple. Just have to see what Kalkbrenner can do when he's in there. Grant Williams, I think it is. So Charlotte's going to have a different looking team, and we'll have to see how it affects them. They had a 9-game win streak before that loss to Detroit yesterday. So recent games, Charlotte has a pretty good offensive rating, 116, pretty good defensive rating, 110. Atlanta's offensive rating not as good, 112.5. Defensively, 116, so not as good there either. But Atlanta, when healthy, can definitely keep up with Charlotte. Missing those pieces, Charlotte's going to be taking a lot of threes, I think. So they already do, but they're going to be taking a lot more without those players. Diabate was pretty good on the inside, and Bridges would work inside. He didn't just shoot threes like some of the other players tend to do. So I would imagine the offense to be looking a little different, and if they go cold, Atlanta, I have always said, is a very streaky team. I think Charlotte is going to get much streakier with these games with those guys off. on the offensive end, and I could see them giving up more on the defensive end. Diabate's been playing really well this year. Bridges obviously adds to the defense side too. So big misses. I think I would lean on the Atlanta side of the spread just because of all of that going on. I know it is in Charlotte, but to be honest, Charlotte hasn't necessarily played the best at home. They've been playing really well overall, but I don't think they play better at home. Atlanta has won in Atlanta 113-110 back in November. Charlotte won 133-126 in Charlotte in December, and they won a couple games ago 126-119 in Atlanta. That game they had everybody was there. Everybody was playing. They won by 7. So I know that was in Atlanta. This is in Charlotte. Like I said, Charlotte hasn't really seemed to have a huge home court advantage. They're 11-14 at home. Charlotte's 16-14 on the road. So I do like Atlanta to cover this spread. The total is going to depend on these teams. They're such streaky teams. I think it's a gamble either way. I think it can very easily cover on 231 going over, and I think it can very easily cover on 231 staying under. It's really going to depend on if those 3-pointers are falling on this game. All right, the next game is going to be Washington going to Cleveland. Cleveland finally finished up their road trip, going back home. Cleveland is favored to win 118.5-112 by the model. Vegas has this much, much larger, 11 points larger. They have it at 17.5 points to open with 235.5 on the total. So on the total, the model is not too far off. It's a few points under. But that spread at 17.5, I think might be the highest spread that I have seen, at least this season. I do not remember anything else being that high. So, big number to cover. I would look for injuries, obviously, first. Washington has had some players out. They've had a lot of people questionable. If they're missing players, this becomes way more reasonable to me. Cleveland's defense, if Mobley is still out, still isn't fantastic. Like I said, Harden is not a great upgrade or anything for them defensively. He's just going to help put up points. The model's been shrinking on Cleveland so far. It has gone from 12.6 down to 6.5 over the week. And on the total, it's actually been climbing. So it's been expecting Washington to score more points because Washington has been scoring more points recently. They upset Detroit in Detroit not that long ago. They've stayed in games a little bit more. They've actually won, 4 games in their last 10, I believe. Yeah, they're 4-6 in their last 10, 2-3 in their last 5. So they're still only 5-20 on the road. Cleveland is 17-11 at home. Cleveland's won 4 straight. They're 9-1 in their last 10. Head-to-heads this year, Cleveland won by 33. They won 148-115 in Washington on November 7th, and then also in Washington, they only won by 4. They won 130-126 on December 12th. So they have a really big win. They have a really close win. Washington has gotten rid of some players, but some of the players they got rid of weren't playing much before they got rid of them. Washington's offensive rating is about 109. Cleveland's defensive rating is about 109. So theoretically, they should score around 109 points if they get about 100 possessions. Cleveland's offensive rating is about 122. Washington's defense is 118. So that's a lot more points, but unless there's a lot of injuries, it still just doesn't justify 17.5 points. So if it stays that way and everybody's healthy, I think I would just have to lean on the Washington side out of the sheer magnitude of that spread. On the total side, I do like the over. I don't think either team is really going to shut down the other team. Obviously, Washington won't. Cleveland, with Mitchell and Harden, they're going to score points. I think Tyson will probably be back. I don't know exactly why he missed the last game. Washington, as long as everyone's healthy, they do have young players that can shoot the ball. Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George. If Trey Johnson is back, those players can hit a lot of threes. Will Riley, I believe it is, has been having some really big games in the absences of some of those players. So I do like the over as my favorite pick on this game. And if this spread doesn't shrink, I think I would just have to take Washington on the spread, which seems really crazy. That's just way too high for me. I would stay away from it, to be perfectly honest. All right, next game is going to be Indiana going to Brooklyn. Model does like Brooklyn by about 6 points, 119 to about 113. When I was starting this, I did not see a line. I'm not sure if one's popped in yet. But the model's been steadily growing on Brooklyn. Indiana's obviously playing tonight. They're playing right now. They're playing the Knicks. So will be on day 2 of a back-to-back. With that information and them already having the spread growing against them, as much as I really wouldn't want to pick Brooklyn, it does seem like a pretty decent option. Brooklyn did already beat Indiana when they played in Indiana, 112 to 103. That was back in early November. Brooklyn has won 2 straight, although it was Washington and Chicago. They're 8-18 at home. They're only 3-10 or 3-7 in their last 10, 2-3 in their last 5. But Indiana is 3-22 on the road. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They are only 1-4 in their last 5. They are actually keeping up with the Knicks right now in the first half. So it's looking like going to be a lot of points, high pace game for the Pacers today. That will probably factor in on day 2 of a back-to-back. So that will lean in Brooklyn's favor. Like I said, the spread wasn't out for this. I imagine they're waiting to see how this game is going to go on pace before they decide what they're going to want to do. As far as the ratings go, neither team's great offensively. Brooklyn 106, Indiana 110. Brooklyn recently has obviously had some big blowouts where they've been on the wrong end. That's going to drag that offensive rating down. That shouldn't happen against Indiana. Indiana has a 117 defense rating. Theirs is actually worse than Brooklyn's by a point. So I would expect Brooklyn to be putting up points against a team that should likely be at least a little bit worn out with the way this game is going. So depending on the total, the model has been growing on the total. It started at 225. It has gotten up to 235 and recorrected down to 232. So if it is around that 230 mark, maybe up towards that 233, the over does seem a little likely as long as Indiana doesn't slow the pace down too much. I think both teams will score on each other. And then Brooklyn, I would like them on the spread as long as it's not too crazy. I don't know that I would take them up at the 6 that the model's doing. If it's around 2 or 3 though, seems a little bit likely. Now, I wouldn't put a lot on it, but it does seem pretty reasonable. Or money line. I would imagine anything that they get them on the money line would have pretty good odds. So you might take them on the money line, and then the total, it's really just going to depend on where it comes in at. I like it around that 230. Where it topped out there, I think it should be between where it's at now and there. I like it around that 232 to 235 mark. All right, next game will be Milwaukee going to Orlando. Got Orlando at 117.5. Milwaukee at a little over 111. So just over 6 points on the spread. Vegas has it at about 10.5 on the spread and 220.5 on the total. So the model is way over on the total, about 8 points higher, 228.8, and it is about 4 points lower on the spread. It is on the Milwaukee side of the spread. It did take a quick dip down for the spread in the middle of the week. I think it was leaning a little too hard into Milwaukee's 3-game win streak. The strength of opponents was not that great during those. I believe it was Indiana, Utah, maybe. I'm I don't remember who all, but it wasn't great teams. So I think it shrunk it a little too much. I could see this being a little higher. I don't know that I love the 10.5. I still think that's a little high. I think I would like it more at about 8. 8.5 seems pretty good, but Orlando hasn't been really rocking it. I know Milwaukee's been struggling a lot, but Orlando's had some really off games too. So 10.5 is a very big spread for Orlando. If you look at the offensive ratings and defensive ratings, Milwaukee's offense versus Orlando defense almost identical. Orlando's offense is only 110.6, so it's actually been worse than Milwaukee in recent games. And then their defense is 6 points worse, so about 117. But I don't think that justifies 10.5 points. I would want to see some injuries reports. If Orlando's fully healthy, if Franz is playing full minutes, if Milwaukee is missing some players again, I know they've had some people in and out off of the injury report. Kevin Porter Jr. and I don't remember who else was in and out, but like if Rollins goes out or something, maybe Orlando goes up there. But to me, that's a very high spread. I would want to buy that down a couple points. I do think Orlando should win this game. Like I said, around 8.5 would have made sense to me. If you get it down around that 6 point at a good odd, that would be the most favorable thing. That would at least alleviate some of the backdoor headache of Orlando having to hold a lead. But I just don't see it being that big. I could see Milwaukee and adding a few points and taking them on the spread as actually being a decent play. I'd want to see more information before I made a final decision on that. On the total, it did start out around where the Vegas has it right now. It was at 219. It made a really sharp increase on day 2. Both teams' points went up. Orlando's went up by 4 points. Milwaukee's went up by 3.5. So that's where most of the total went up. Then it corrected back down, and then it shot up again yesterday or this morning. So it went up another 7 points today. So it's not really sure where it wants to be. The fact that it's spiking up and not down on this, I would lean into the over on this game. But on that, you're going to have to rely on Milwaukee scoring points. Although I said it's a big spread for Orlando, which I do believe it is, Milwaukee has shown that they can really, really struggle, and Orlando can be a team that can play some good defense sometimes. They've had some off games, but other games they can really shut teams down. So if this ends up in a blowout, the total as an over would be at risk. But I think it's going to stay a little bit closer. I do think that the over looks a little bit better. And I think the spread's just a little bit too high for me to be comfortable on that. All right, the next game will be Sacramento going to Utah. Two struggling teams this year. We got Utah at 119 and Sacramento 114 from the model. There was no line when I started this, so I'm not sure where it's going to come out. The model has been relatively steady all week. It's been Utah between 2.5 and just over 5, so within about a 3-point margin. The total has also been pretty steady, about a 3-point margin between 233 and 236. So the model is relatively confident on this game. It is liking Utah by a few points, and it's liking a decently high scoring game. Given the two defenses, Sacramento at a 122.5 defensive rating, Utah at a 117 recent defense rating, it probably will be a high scoring game. I would expect the total to be a little bit higher. I would expect it to be low 240s just because of how bad these defenses are, and the offenses can score points. Sacramento put up quite a few points on Cleveland like 3 days ago, something like that. They put up 40-some in the third quarter. Utah, obviously, when healthy, can put up a lot of points too. If Keontae George is playing, if Markkanen is playing, now that they have Triple J in the lineup, this is going to be a different team. So I think I do like Utah to win this game if everybody's healthy. If Keontae and Laurie are in there with Triple J, I think that's going to be a very good offense, especially with Collier coming off the bench. The offenses recently for both teams have been struggling. Utah's, I think, has been way more injury. Sacramento's had players in there. They're just a streaky team. They'll hang on till the end of a game, and then a lot of times they'll just have a pretty bad fourth quarter. So I would be Utah on the spread if it is around, if it is low, if it is around 5 points or less. I do think Utah has a really good chance of covering if healthy. Same with the over. If it is around that 240 mark, 235, if it's at 235, definitely I would like the over. If it gets up to 240, I think I would still take it just because I think both of these teams will allow more points than they're going to try to stop in the game. All right, next game will be Miami going to New Orleans. This is a game where the model's been a little confused on who it thinks is going to win. Thinks it's going to be a close game, but it's not entirely sure. Like today, it liked New Orleans 117 to 116. Yesterday, it liked Miami 116 to 115. 2 days before that was New Orleans 116 115. So it's been liking a close game, but it's not really sure who it likes. New Orleans has been playing a little bit better. They've been in some of the games they've been losing. They've been winning a couple more recently. They have a young team that's been playing pretty well. Miami obviously has been having injuries. They've had some players in and out. Some of the games they've had, there was a game against Chicago where I think almost everyone except for Bam that I would consider a star on the team was out. So they've definitely had their lineup shaken up. I would keep an eye out again tomorrow. I know Hero, I believe, was showing questionable the last game. I don't believe he ended up playing. But Mitchell's been in and out. Powell, I believe, did miss the last game. Maybe it was the one before that. Bam has been pretty consistent, but they've had some role players along with Powell that have just been in and out. So keep an eye on the injury report there. New Orleans has been pretty clean. I haven't seen too many big injuries on their injury report. It's not the second day of a back-to-back, so I wouldn't expect them to be resting anybody. They are playing at home, so there is that little bit of a bump. Miami's only 12 and 16 on the road. New Orleans is 9 and 19 at home, so they're not great, but it's better than their away record, I do believe. So they are better at home. Both teams 5 and 5 in their last 10. Both teams 2 and 3 in their last 5. The head-to-head did go to Miami. Miami won in Miami by 19, 125 to 106. That was on January 4th. So the offensive ratings, Miami's is slightly under New Orleans in recent games. They're scoring about 2 points less per 100 possessions. New Orleans' defensive rating is about 4 points worse than Miami, giving up about 4 points more. So it's about a 2-point favorite in Miami on that. So, I mean, it should be a pretty close game if they play the way that they've been playing recently. Trey Murphy, if he's hitting threes, can keep right up there with Norman Powell. New Orleans has quite a few big men that can stay in there with Bam and Kel'el Ware. They have Queen, they have Missy. I feel like I'm missing one. I can't remember who it is. But they have players that can get rebounds in there, that can bang bodies in there, and it should be a good game. Those guys can also shoot. Queen, I know he's at least hit a couple threes recently because I saw it and it shocked me. I didn't know he could shoot from outside. But it should be a good game. I don't see this really being a blowout. If it does, I would think it would go in the Miami way. I do think they have the better overall team. I think a lot of this has to do with their injuries and if they're going to be healthy, which they haven't been recently. So wait till you at least see a preliminary injury report, get a decent feel on how it's going to go. Neither team's playing today, so injury reports should be out a little earlier tomorrow. If everything's good and healthy, I think it should be a good game, or I would honestly probably lean Miami on the money line. New Orleans is favored, though. New Orleans does have the 1.5 point favorite from Vegas. It is 232.5 for the total, so the model's only one over. So the consistency, I guess, is exactly what Vegas is seeing as well. It is right there with it. So I just personally, I do think Miami is a little bit better of a team, but New Orleans has been playing better. So I would just take Miami plus points. Just I trust them more as long as they are the healthy team. I do see this game going over too. 232.5. I definitely see both of these teams being able to score more points than that. I don't think they've necessarily shown it as much recently, but the potential is there. And taking an under at 232.5 in this game just seems a little riskier to me. All right, next game will be New York going to Philly. Philly's not playing tonight. New York is playing the Pacers right now. It is at halftime, and New York is up almost 70 to 60 something. So there is a lot of scoring in that. Again, I would expect that to translate a little bit into tomorrow. These starters are going to be playing a little more minutes than they probably expected going against Indiana today, and they are leaving their home at Madison Square Garden again. They do typically play better at home, although in this series so far this year, the road team has won every game. Philly's won twice in New York. New York won the last game they played when they played in Philly. New York won 112 to 109 on January 24th. Philly won by 9. They won 116 to 107 on December 19th. And they won by 11, 130 to 119 on January 3rd. So Philly has had the bigger wins. New York has the only win in Philly so far. New York has been really hot, obviously. And so even on the second day of a back-to-back, it's just going to depend again on who they play. Last time they had a back-to-back, they went to double overtime with Denver. The next night, they sat Karl Anthony Towns, they sat OG Anunoby, and Detroit blew them out by almost 40 points. So keep an eye on the injury report. New York might sit people. If New York sits people, you never know. Philly may sit Joel Embiid again. He sat last game for rest. Obviously, he's still going through injury issues, recurring all the time. So they'll take any chance they can get to rest him, I think. I wouldn't expect it with him resting the last game and a day off in between, but you never know. The model did start off much stronger on New York, and it's been dipping down. The total's been dipping down. It went from 229. It's sitting at 226 after being at 223 yesterday. The points, the spread's gone from Philly just as a push to New York by 5. Then it went back to pretty much a push, a little bit on the Philly side. Now it's back on the New York side by a point. Vegas has it at about 1.5 points for New York, has the total at about 223.5. So the low that the total dipped to is where Vegas has the line, has been mostly on the overside. I think, again, Vegas is probably expecting New York to not push the pace tomorrow after playing tonight. As far as the spread goes, if New York sits some people and Philly plays Embiid, I think Philly could easily cover that spread. If everybody plays, it'd be a little bit harder. I don't know. I would have to see a little more in the morning, do a little more research before I really made a decision on the spread if everyone was healthy. Because I just don't think New York is going to play everybody just based on what they did last time and just pretty much gave up to the win to Detroit. I could easily see that happen again tomorrow. So I don't think I would want to take an early spread on this. As far as the total, they made it a little tempting at 223. The model dipped down to 223, but it's been pretty comfortable over that all week long. Both teams have really good offensive ratings recently. New York is 118. Philly's about 120. New York's defensive rating obviously has been a lot better, 103. Philly's is about 115.5. So Philly will give up points to New York even if New York doesn't really push it. And a healthy Philly team might push a tired New York defense. So I do like the over where it's at. I would expect that to probably go up. I could be wrong. Maybe you'll find a better line in the morning, but I like the over better than anything. For the totals, I would really just want to see the rosters in the morning. well, in the afternoon, whenever New York finally gets their final roster out, and just see what you're looking at that point. All right, next game is a rematch of a game currently going on, Clippers at Houston. This game has the same prediction as what it had today. So it's not, obviously, it's going off of all of the same information. So it's expecting the Clippers to win by 4, which is what it had predicted for today. Clippers are actually up midway through the second quarter, 37-35. So maybe it was a little better. I believe Houston was favored by about 8 or 9 points today. There's no line out for tomorrow. Obviously, they want to see what today's game does. But early in the game, midway through the second quarter, it is looking like the Clippers will cover that spread at 8-9. If they do, I would expect it to be much closer, if not favored for the Clippers tomorrow. Obviously, that's what they're waiting on, is just to see how tonight's game goes. It was very heavy on Houston, and it made a flip to LA yesterday when I ran the model. Big flip, 7 points from Houston 3 to LA 4. The total has been pretty steady. It did make a big jump to 227.5, but it's been 220, 224 right in that area for most of the week. That's about where I would expect the line to come out, but I think this game will be heavily influenced by however it turns out today. Recently, Houston has struggled more offensively. They're only at 110 on the offensive rating. In LA's defensive rating is at right around the same, about 0.6 higher at 110.8. So that's a pretty good matchup, and that should keep Houston scoring a little lower. LA has been scoring decent. They've been 115.4, even with Zubac and Harden all leaving. And they're going up against a good Houston 107.7 defensive rating. So that should hold their scoring down a little bit. But both these teams, obviously, day 2 of a back-and-back. They're playing the same team. There's no travel involved. Same city, same matchup. But they did play. So if this game does stay tight tonight, maybe we will see some people sit out again tomorrow. Like I said, this is the NBA. You know that's always going to end up happening, or at least always a possibility. So wait, see how this game turns out tonight. But the Clippers are looking pretty good, even with the changes, with losing pieces and not even really getting a whole lot back. Mathurin did start today. I'm not entirely sure how he's doing yet, but with one game in today, then if he plays again tomorrow, he should be pretty rested. I would imagine he'll start again tomorrow. Hopefully he'll do a little bit better. And I would imagine that chemistry will just keep building. The Clippers score has been going up all week, went from 109 up to 113. Excuse me. Houston's has actually went up and then it dropped. It went from 111 to 115 and then it dropped to 110. So the model's just really unsure with Houston. I think Houston has been really unsure with Houston recently. They haven't been playing like themselves. LA's been pretty consistent, even with the changes, and the model is liking them for that. So on this game, like I said, wait till you actually see lines, see where it's going. But it's looking like Clippers could be a decent match for Houston, and probably around that 220 mark. All right, the next game is going to be Detroit heading to Toronto. The model likes Detroit to win 116 to 114, so it is about 5 points on the spread. Vegas has it opening at about 1.5 points, and they have the total at about 223.5. So about 4 points under the total, and about 3.5 points on the Toronto side of the spread. Well, the model is on the Detroit side by 3.5 more. So obviously Detroit will be losing some players. Duren is very likely out for at least tomorrow, if not more. Stu came off the bench, threw a punch. He's obviously out for at least a game, probably much more. So Detroit is losing 2 of their big men. They'll have Paul Reed in there. He's been okay in the absence in past games, but to lose both their big men is going to be a big hit. I believe Podol came back for Toronto. Colin Murray Boyles has been playing pretty well, so they have some decent big men that can exploit that if Paul Reed struggles, gets into foul trouble, anything like that, it'll hurt. Detroit's going to have to play a lot smaller ball. I would imagine Cade Cunningham is probably going to try to control the game a little more. You might want to go for his assists. Uh, the pick and roll options are not going to be as good for him, I don't think. So he may have to drive in and kick out to one of the shooters that's there. Duncan Robinson may have some looks. Obviously, on the other side, there's a lot of props you can look at. Scotty Barnes has been a prop machine. PRA, if you want to take him for everything. Rebounds and assists combined are normally pretty good for him. Barrett, I can't figure out as much. I know there's something to his game that I'm missing, but some games he does really well. Other games he does okay. Doesn't have a ton of bad games, but some games he just doesn't get to where I expect him to. Then you have Brandon Ingram, obviously been having a really good year. So this should be a really good matchup, especially with Detroit losing the pieces. If they have any injuries on top of that, I kind of like, even though the model is at Detroit on 5, that's not going to have that information yet. Nobody has that information yet, as far as I know. I haven't seen suspensions come out, but I think I would like Toronto to cover at this early line. I would expect that to probably flip. Toronto hasn't been terrible. They're 16 and 12 at home. They've won 7 of their last 10. They've won 3 of their last 5. So Detroit 17 and 7 on the road, so they are still good on the road. They travel. They've won 7 of their last 10, 4 of their last 5. But those are some big pieces that are missing, and I just don't think that it's going to go without affecting them. I think that they will probably lose in Toronto, being on the road with all that going on. I just think Toronto is the better side to go with. On the total side, the model has mostly been over. Actually, it's been over every day. So it's been up over 230. I would think that those players missing is probably going to hurt Detroit's defense more than their offense. So with the model already going over, I think I would take Toronto, and I think the over looks like the better market just because Duran and Stu both play pretty good defense. Not having them in there is going to open up a lot for those players. So I think the over would be my favorite pick. Toronto on the spread, especially at plus, add a few more points. I think that's a pretty good look. All right, the next game will be San Antonio going to Golden State. San Antonio will be playing the Lakers tonight. But even though it's going to be day 2 of a back-to-back, LA is looking like they're not going to have much playing. LeBron's out. I believe Reeves is out. Doncic is out. So the Spurs should have a pretty easy time tonight. I would imagine they're going to be able to rest some starters later in the game. So I wouldn't expect that to affect them too much. I would think it would be more like a practice than a game, but that still remains to be seen. They got to play the game. It is the NBA, so you never know. The model does like San Antonio 120 to 115. So 5 points on the spread, about where Vegas has it. They have it at 5.5 points for San Antonio. And then on the total, the model likes it at 235.5. Vegas is coming in 20 points under. Obviously, Curry has been out for a while. I think he's still out till, I think I saw he might be out till after the All-Star break. But if he's still out, that's a big hit to their scoring. But it's not like they don't have other players that can score. Golden State definitely can put up some numbers, but San Antonio has a pretty good defense. So that could limit it if some of these role players just can't get hot. They don't have that star to fall back on right now. The total has been pretty consistent in moving up from the model, though. It has been at 230 and it's moved up to 235. On the spread, it grew pretty high, went from 1.4 to 7.5 in one day. So a huge jump on San Antonio. And it lingered right around 7 points and then took a dip this morning. So I think it corrected for something it probably shouldn't have. I would expect San Antonio to cover this spread tomorrow. unless they get into a shootout with the Lakers that I just don't see. If they can play their normal defense, I would expect their bench to get in and their starters to be relatively rested for a day too. Golden State's obviously depleted. They have a lot of injuries, big name injuries. So they're already kind of on a day two with the way they've been having to play. So San Antonio's offense 115 rating. Golden State's offensive rating has dipped down to a 108, but 108 is right there where San Antonio's defensive rating is, so that's not very good. That is definitely making this look like Golden State's just not going to have a really good scoring game, which is why the market has the total at 216. But San Antonio's offense 115 versus Golden State's defense at 117 is a good matchup for San Antonio. If they're coming in, if they rested it all, if they don't have to play too much tonight, too hard, I think they will put up points. I don't think they're going to hold Golden State to 100 points. I would expect them to get to around that 108. And if they do, I do think this game goes over. My favorite would be the San Antonio spread, as long as they don't get into some crazy game tonight. I think they should be able to handle this Golden State team that's left. The total, I just like the over. I just don't think that with as low as it is, that it can stay that low. I would expect that to go up. All right, here is the last game for tomorrow. It's going to be OKC heading to Phoenix. Model likes OKC about 117 to about 112 for Phoenix, so 5 points on the spread. Vegas is opening up a little larger, 6.5 points for OKC, and the total quite a bit lower, 217. Model has it at 229, so about 11, 12 points lower on the total. The spread, however, it started on the OKC side this week. On day one, it was at 8.5 points, and it's just slowly drifted down from day two to where it's at 5. So Phoenix will be on day two of a back-to-back. They're going to be playing Dallas tonight. They will be at home, so there's no travel, but still day two going up to a good Oklahoma City team. Phoenix won 108 to 105 in Phoenix on the 4th of January. OKC had much better wins, at least one of them, 138 to 89 in OKC on December 10th. Also in OKC was 123 to 119 on November 28th. So Phoenix has the more recent win. They did win at home. It was only a 3-point win. Very low scoring game. I would not expect that to happen again, especially on the second day of a back-to-back. I don't think they're going to be holding OKC to 105 points. Phoenix's offensive rating is only 109. They're a very streaky team. Definitely rely on the three. Even getting Booker and Green back on day two of a back-to-back, it's going to be questionable if they're going to be able to go. I would not be surprised if at least one of them sits again tomorrow. OKC's offensive rating 115. Phoenix's defensive rating 114. So OKC should be scoring points. Like I said, I don't expect them to score 105 again. Other games, they had 138 and 123. I would expect those scores to be more reasonable. SGA's probably out again. I think he's out till after the break. J-Dub did come back last game. Hartenstein and Holmgren have both been playing. So OKC's mostly healthy. Phoenix, like I said, day two of a back-to-back, I would not be surprised to see one of those stars sitting out again. It just seems like it would be pretty likely. And their streaky shooting doesn't really fare well against a team like OKC. I know they do have one win, but it was very low scoring for OKC, and it was a very close win. On the total, the model has been at 228 to 231 all week long, so it's been within 3 points, and it's been significantly higher than what Vegas has it at, 10 points higher. So I do think one of the best plays would be the over on this game. I think Phoenix will probably score. They normally do. I know they're streaky. OKC can hold them down. It is a bit of a risk. The game in Phoenix did stay under. It only got to 213. But even at such a low-scoring game, it made it within 4.5 points of this total. The other games in OKC blew them out. Like, one was 138 to 89. So that one was well over. The other one was 123 to 119. So that one was even higher. So I do think this over under the total is just set too low. I would expect that to move up as the day goes on. That would be the way I would take it. I would take the over. And I do think OKC has a really good shot to cover the spread. I would wait on injury information, obviously, for a lot of this. As long as Hartenstein, Holmgren's going, as long as J-Dub's still going, and then check the Phoenix side. Make sure that Booker's not sitting. If Jalen Green is sitting, those probably won't come out until later in the day because of the back-to-back. So just keep an eye out on those things. Could be a good prop game. Some OKC games are, some OKC games aren't. Same with Phoenix. So there's shooters there. There's props that could be made. Gillespie threes, Brooks threes. If Grayson Allen ends up playing, I know he's out tonight. His threes have been really good, but that's another one too. I didn't actually think about. Grayson Allen has been out, so that would hurt Phoenix too. That could keep the scoring down as well. His threes have been a huge part of Devin Booker being out. So if Booker ends up sitting and Allen is out, that could be a huge hit to their offense. At that point, I probably would just stay away from the spread. I don't think I would ever take the under on this game just because of the shooting power and the streakiness. And if any of these Phoenix shooters get hot, then they can put up a lot of points in just one single quarter. So if you have any questions, I got this out a little earlier today than I tend to since I normally do it in the morning. If you like it better at night, let me know. Give me a thumbs up, give me a comment, just give me some sort of information to let me know that you want this the night before, and I'll try to make it happen. So good luck out there. Make sure you do your extra research. Only follow the ones you like, and we'll see you tomorrow.